Hello, you've reached Gloria with Farmstead Talk, and I am here today with Deb Webster, and she is with Whispering Pines Farm, and she's representing her state of South Carolina in this homesteading interview. Welcome, Deb, and thank you for joining me.
I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for joining me. So, would you like to share with the audience where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, if they go to dairysheepdeb.com, that's my website. And from there, I have all the social media links with Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Facebook, I keep a lot of stuff on Facebook, so they'll see a lot on Facebook. I have a personal page and a business with Whispering Pines Upstate Equestrian Ministry, so they'll see all that.
Okay, great. So go ahead and share a little bit about yourself and where you're currently living.
We live in Seneca, South Carolina. We have bought this farm about a year ago, and we had moved from Malden, which 30 years, and that was a 20-acre farm. And on the farm now, we have both daughters back at home. They're both adults, and they're in their 20s. And there's one of them's helping with, she just graduated from Clemson University, and the other one is back at Clemson taking classes.
Okay.
And it's kind of a rural area, and it had grown up so much around our other farm that we were pretty crowded and didn't have any way to expand. And this farm has so much acreage, it's just beautiful. In fact, we only have like an acre on, we only have a neighbor on each side of us, and they're super friendly and super supportive of what we're trying to do with the place. But everyone else is pretty far out, and it's a good area, we're a rural town, and our land is roughly about half of it is wooded, and since we got about 12 pastures fenced in, ranging anywhere from 5 to 20 acres each, with plans to cross fence even more. We have about 30 acres on the back half of the property that has a river at the back of it, and it's set up in a silvo type pasture, which we're pretty excited about. And there's a ram pump in the river and the ponds down there with cisterns for watering the animals. So we're pretty excited about that too.
Okay, sounds lovely. So what gardening zone are you in?
We're in Region 7, and we use organic methods, but we're not certified.
Okay.
And,
are you growing in the ground, or what kind of methods are you growing? Like permaculture? Are you growing in raised beds, or what are you doing for your beds?
I guess it's we have small ruminants and horses and cows and all that, so we're in the business of growing forage for the animals more than anything. But as we get set up, I do want to set up some raised beds with some herbs and things like that for my cheeses, because we do a lot of different things with mint and with garlic and with rosemary and some different herbs, so we'd like to set that up. We do have a lot of pecan trees on the property, and we have a fig tree that, from what people have told us, could be as old as 200 years old, and we're trying to make it come back. We make preserves out of figs and put it in our cheese, so we want to get this thing going. It'll be a neat tree to see what it's going to be when we figure it out, maybe even get some sprigs going and sell the Webster fig tree, which would be pretty neat.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, that fig tree. I hope you get it re-going again. So what kind of animals actually do you have out on the farm?
Well, we've got horses. We use the horses for trail riding and therapy and agritourism. Cows we use to raise beef. We got chickens and ducks for eggs and for meat. And then our main thing is our sheep and goats, and they're dairy sheep, which we're the only ones that have a licensed sheep dairy in South Carolina. And there's only about 50 of us in the whole U.S. With dairy goats, we started with the dairy goats, and we do some meat with the goats, but mostly it's dairy goats. And then the sheep, of course, even if you're in dairy, that doesn't mean you're not in meat. So we use every part of the animal, from the meat to the milk and the wool.
Okay.
And we have raise livestock guardian dogs, and we have a border collie. We use him all the time with the ruminants.
You said you had horses. Can you just touch on the base of what you used to do, the training that you used to do with horses before?
Yeah, I grew up working at a stable, and I used to train horses professionally for show, equitation, and pleasure riding. We had a riding academy, and I probably taught thousands of kids and adults to ride. My business with horses started in 1980, And as time went on, I had 2 stables with tack shops and training facilities at both places. In 1993, I got married, and 18 months later, we started having children. And after that, I decided to slow down a little bit and only show in about 5 states. And eventually, we put showing on hold until we could spend more time, with our kids. In 1998, we started a Christian ministry using horses to share the gospel, which was pretty neat. And right about that December, we did our first live nativity. And the first year we only had horses. We had to put names around, like a little spotted Appaloosa as a speckled pig, and then a white one as a lamb. And we put fake ears on another old horse to make it a mule. And then after that, the next year, a friend of mine brought sheep and goats, and she ended up going through a bad divorce and gave me the sheep and goats. And that's how the sheep and goats started back in 1998. So that's how that started.
So what type of sheep and goats do you have?
Well, currently we have what's called East Frisian dairy sheep, as well as Tunis, which is typically a meat and wool sheep. And then the dairy goats, we have Saanen goats, which are our biggest producers, Nubians, because everybody loves the floppy ears, and by pet goats. We used to milk the Nigerians, but it was just real hard at this point when we got a bigger population of animals to milk the miniatures on the same stand with the larger standard breeds. So we just use them mostly for pets.
Okay, and so with the dairy, you have what kind of facility do you have there that you're making your products with?
So we have enlarged from our last location. We've got a huge cheese plant, which is just giant rooms with big vats that hold I can do about a little over 100 gallons at a time making cheese. And typically you count on, if you're using goat milk or cow's milk, if you have 1 gallon of milk, you get 1 pound of cheese. So I'm making 100 pounds at a time. With my sheep milk, the difference between sheep milk and cow's milk and goat's milk is sheep milk can yield at least twice as much, and in certain seasons 3 times as much cheese. So I'll take 1 pound of cheese and 1 gallon of sheep milk and can come away with up to 3 pounds of cheese, which is phenomenal. Plus it has 3 times the protein, and it has the ease of digestibility that goat milk does. So it's a great product, and hardly anybody knows about it.
Yeah, that sounds fabulous. So what type of sustainable practices are you utilizing in your household, would you say?
Well, with our farm, we try to make use of everything. For instance, with our sheep, if we're going to harvest a sheep, we're going to use everything from the head to the tail. What I mean by that is we're going to use even the bones for broth bones. The fat, we render it down to make tallow for the soap. The wool we use for mulch, or we make yarns or felted materials for gardening. And you can felt wool, take a big amount of wool, raw wool, and you won't have to clean it, just felt it down. So that's by adding water and, let's say, some soap, and get it thin, and you can make a blanket that could cover up plants to keep them warm. You could make a covering around plants like you're mulching with it, or you can even plant seeds in it. It'll hold twice its weight in water, and it'll keep frost from affecting it. So it's a pretty neat thing. And we'll even use the hides and get them tanned out. So we don't want to waste anything. With gray water from the dairy, we're wanting to use it even more for either for fertilizer, a natural fertilizer going back into the land, but mostly we want to use it for plants that can take high phosphorus and put it in areas and kind of do a hydroponic thing. We want to maybe grow our elderberry bushes there because they can run off of the high phosphorus water that comes out of there in different levels. We save manure and compost, and we spread it back on the land. And even when we're using round bales, we try to move the round bales around or unwind them or unroll them so that they don't make huge areas, but they bring that nutrient back to the soil when it's been taken up. So that's mostly some things we're doing.
That sounds great. I know you spent some time with the legislature in your state. You want to share what you're doing with that and what kind of laws you're trying to change, or what's all that about?
Okay, well, it kind of starts with who I'm connected with. And so I'm the president of South Carolina Sheep, and that's part of the American sheep industry. And we went to Washington, D.C. with them. With my other agricultural groups. That would be, I'm a board member of the South Carolina Forage and Grazing Land Coalition, which has a national parent. That's the American Forage Group. And then the other part is with, I was the founder of the first dairy sheep 4-H club in the world, and we have a foundation that's called Whispering Pines Foundation, which is a nonprofit that educates, empowers, and encourages youth and adults and families to start small ruminants. So really, all that is what plugs me in to doing the things that we're talking about in the government. So, and we were in Washington this past week. In fact, we're still coming home right now. We had a meeting with the USDA, and the USDA was talking about there's farms registered with the government that go above and beyond to ensure good, healthy, small ruminants and exceptional record keeping. There's about 230 of those farms, and we're one of them. So I did tell them that since the USDA requires people with sheep and goats to have scrapies tags for identification to follow them back so that we can have the U.S. as a scrapie free for exporting our meats to other countries, then they should cost share. They used to give those tags for free, and now they're charging for them. They have a few tags that they'll give to people that are producers. But we have a team working in cooperation with the USDA that's trying to work on a cost-sharing RFID, radio frequency identification, that is going to be the future that everybody will want. So why not just cut to the chase and not waste a bunch of money on tags that nobody really wants? So that's one thing we're trying to work with them. As far as trying to make some of these rules and regulations not so difficult for people to do what they want to do. And I feel certain, and I'm sure you do too, and many people do, that there's a real movement in the U.S. for people to get back to nature and raise their own food, whether it's raising produce or what we want to support and help is people raising their own dairy in the classes and providing services and even starter flocks. And that's something that I also told our local state government, our state senators and our state congressmen, that's what we're doing, and we could use any help that they can, because there's a lot of government programs that actually help farmers that farmers don't even know about. And sometimes the red tape is so difficult, people don't even know how to do it. I mean, I was doing stuff and I didn't even know that there was actually cost sharing and there was programs, and there's a lot of ways that people can get a lot of help to do what they want to do. And, we want to make it easier for people to see that.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you for sharing that information. I truly believe that there are a lot of programs out there that the government is willing to assist with. The problem is the marketing of those programs. Yeah. Nobody knows about them.
Nobody knows about them. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And it's amazing. I had talked with some other folks a while back, and they said the same thing, that they are finding out so much just by going to their local USDA office and their local community office, how that they're finding a wealth of information that's out there that's not publicly known. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your work that you're doing with the the legislature over in your state. In what ways have you helped the homesteading community, whether with education or just trying to help the community become more self-reliant?
We really like mentoring people, and we've started a lot of people, and I'll tell people, whether you get a goat or sheep from me or not, I'm still going to help you no matter what. And if someone gets a sheep or goat from me, I got to tell you, I've got people in 5 different states we have the technology now. I don't have to be in their neighborhood. They can send me a video of what's going on, and I can usually diagnose it or ask good questions to help figure it out. Because sometimes people don't know the right questions to ask, or they don't have any idea what's happening. They would try to do preventative measures to keep the animal healthy, but they didn't know the preventative measures. They didn't even have enough experience to ask a good question. So we try to do classes to help people get started, get a good start for the animals, and help them. If people listen to me, I'll help them. That's the thing. Some people, I had one lady call me up and tell me how good she was at everything, and I thought, well, I can't really help you because you know everything, and it's just a matter of people kind of humbling themselves and trying to just really learn, and we're still learning, and I love to learn new things. And we had meetings with as we were traveling up to DC and back, we stopped at 2 different farms, and I'm going to use some of the stuff they're doing, and they're going to use some of the stuff I'm doing. And we got to pull together as just all one family trying to do the same thing. And we all want the same end. We want a better place for our children, our children's children, and get back to nature and get out of this crazy, too much electrical stuff and get back outside and, get kids with dirty hands and clean hearts and get right back with the animals. It's a healing, really. It's really the shelter from life's storms, I think, is to get outside and work with animals. And I think it's more the way God intended it to be.
I absolutely agree with you 100%. If someone had come to you and said, you know what, I'm moving to South Carolina, I've never been there before, and I want to start living the lifestyle that you're living, I want to start farming and homesteading, what advice would you give to those people?
Well, come on, come on down. That's such an open-ended question, because I think what I would tell people is if you do soil samples, you'll know if that ground is going to produce what you want to produce, even if you don't even know what you want it to produce. Because if you don't have good soil, you're starting at such a deficit, it could take you years to get where you want to get. And that's, to me, one good starting point. And then we moved from a farm that was really totally set up. We'd been there a long time. We had all the facilities we needed, all the fences we needed. But many times when you get a farm, it ends up evolving into what you want. And it really wasn't started. So when we had less built on this farm, we could build it the way we wanted to, instead of just, adding to this and adding to that. So, but that being said, we've spent so much on buildings and facilities, because if something's already there, you can modify it and it doesn't cost so much for the initial building part of it. So I think research it, figure out what you want to do, come up with a plan, because we've taught classes. In fact, there's something that's probably on YouTube that I did taught for the American sheep industry on beginning farmers. And one thing that I told them to do is try to figure out what you would, just dream big, think about the biggest thing you want to do. Because everybody that I taught in those beginning farmer classes had a plan to start feeding their family first and then go into a business after that. So think about what your end game would be and then work towards that. Because sometimes if you spend a little more money, it takes you less time and less money in the long run and less labor. If you don't have much money, it's going to take you more time and more labor to get it done. So if you kind of go with that rule of thumb, you can kind of figure out how you want to go.
But
go ahead.
Sorry. Just to interrupt, but is there something different in South Carolina that may be different there than there would be if they were starting anywhere else?
Well, the people are friendly and the land is beautiful. It's an easy place to grow forage. You can grow forage 365 days of the year, missing maybe about 6 weeks in between seasons. So I think for people that want to grow produce, and of course that's all seasonal, somewhat. But if they want to be able to keep livestock, they don't freeze to death like they do out west or higher up north. The people are friendly, so they'll help you. I think that's the main thing about South Carolina. I was born in Illinois, and it was pretty deep snow pretty often and pretty cold. And a lot of times people weren't as friendly as they are here. So I think that's a good environment for people.
So would you say that the temperature of the environment is your favorite thing about being out there?
The land is just beautiful. We've just been driving all over the U.S., and I think South Carolina's got it nailed down with all the trees and the mountains. There's beaches, there's mountains, and there's all kinds of stuff, all kinds of bodies of water just in one state, just about anything you could want. And I think it's a little easier to grow things than it is in other areas. But everybody has bonuses in every area in every state of the union. There's something good in every state of the union.
This is true. So we're getting ready to wrap up. If you can sum up in one word what your homesteading experience has meant to you thus far, what would that word be?
I think passion. I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about helping people. I'm passionate about loving my sheep and goats and all the animals on the farm. I think that pretty much describes what I want to do and how I want to be, and everything about what we do here.
Sounds great. Thanks, Deb, for spending time with me today on this interview. I really appreciate it. And I know a lot of people are going to get a lot out of it. Thank you again.
I hope so. Yeah.